I am meant to have lost audio from Corey.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Splunk's .conf Pavilion. We're here in the Splunk studios, streaming live from Las Vegas. And my name's Corey Minton. I'm the director of the Observability Strategist team here at Splunk. And if you've watched any of these videos before or been on social for anything Splunk related, you've probably seen that I have a pretty serious passion, maybe call it addiction, to motorsports and how we bring observability to esports, sim racing, and frankly, real life racing as much as possible. And we do it with Splunk in really cool and fun ways. And today I was actually wanted to have this conversation with Brett Adams, who's a cyber analytics security consultant for Deloitte, because he's somebody who is just like me and my team that has followed our curiosity, our desire to tinker with Splunk technology to bring data out of these fun sim racing platforms and do interesting things with it, and sometimes bridge the gap into real life. And so I'd like to welcome Brett joining us remotely from beautiful Australia. Brett Adams, how the heck are you, my friend?
Yes. Yeah, great. Thanks, Corey. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you virtually all the way from Australia.
That's awesome, man. Well, now I noticed that you're not wearing the hat that I'm used to seeing you don because, during COVID, everybody has become the meme of themselves. There he is. Yes, there it is. Brett Adams, Splunk Trust member. For maybe some of those folks who don't know what the Splunk Trust is, Brett, why don't you tell them just a little bit about what this awesome organization's about?
Yeah, sure. So Splunk Trust is basically a recognition of a set number of individuals across the world who have contributed to the Splunk community. And quite honestly, it's in a variety of different ways. I think maybe one of the most traditional ways is answering questions on Splunk Answers.
Yeah.
There's participating in user groups. And also, sort of the way that I've got in is through developing applications that help solve problems in the Splunk community. So I've got a lot of Splunk apps, and I'm joined by 70 other people all around the world with a wide variety of experiences, backgrounds, and ways that they contribute to the Splunk community. So we have our own little private chat rooms, and we all work together sort of to try and lift the greater good and help everyone across the world with their Splunk.
I do love that because two things that are in common that all trust members seem to have in common is incredible skills and knowledge in Splunk, really the ability to build and create and solve problems in a unique way, but the willingness to share and make everybody better and help others to achieve their outcomes, I think is the two unifying threads I love so much about the Splunk Trust. Now, you and I cross paths because we both have followed our tinkering and curiosity paths down to sim racing. And I'm pretty sure you've built something that, while we don't have it on display here, I certainly know we've used it as a reference. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your Forza app and the racing telemetry app that you built that's out there in Splunkbase?
Yeah, certainly. So it actually was originally called, I think, Forza Telemetry or Forza Racing. And I've actually got an entire conf talk here about my journey and my process from where I started wanting to find a use case, just anything that would use Splunk metrics so I could just learn and grow my own personal experience.
Yep.
Um, but I was I was eager to get that experience and that hands-on, and I was just playing Forza one day, and I'm like, oh, hang on, this says telemetry. That's machine data. I happen to be working with this machine data platform called Splunk. That's pretty cool. I'm going to try. I'm going to just uh, do the research and figure out as best I can, how do I get this data from the game
Hmm.
into Splunk? And it was quite a journey, but it was quite a rewarding journey because this has been, as Splunk has released new features and things. I keep coming back to this app and I keep improving it and trying to push the boundaries as best I can.
So for those folks that maybe are watching, don't sort of really understand the way that we build Splunk apps and how telemetry, why metrics make sense. But let's talk about that a little bit, right? So the game is outputting data via a stream protocol called, is this one's UDP, right? Is that the stream protocol?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
so walk us through sort of that life cycle of how data is being created in the game. How does one Splunk? But yes, Splunk can be a verb. How does one Splunk a video game?
Yeah, certainly. So the game outputs basically this big binary blob of numbers, mostly floating point numbers, and it does it every single frame. So if the game's running at 60 frames per second, you're getting 60 of these data packets every second. And now Splunk doesn't have a way to natively just understand that data. So
Yeah.
what I did is I downloaded the Splunk add-on builder, which is basically an app that lets you write other apps.
Hmm.
I did my research. I figured out what the structure is, what are the order of all the different numbers, what all the numbers even mean, because
Hmm.
there's 85 values coming out of this game every 1/60th of a second. And so I wrote some Python code, and I initially just hacked with it sort of outside of Splunk, made sure I could even do it.
Hmm.
And then once I had the data flowing through and had the Python code to understand these binary data, it was just trying to a matter of figuring out the most efficient way to write that into Splunk. And the really nice thing about the Splunk add-on builder and the tools provided is once I have the data and I understand it, it's almost trivial to just punch that into either a regular event index, so put
Hmm.
it in as text. But the exciting thing for me was, well, these are all floating point numbers, high precision, really long numbers with lots of decimal places. I can put them into a metrics index, which
Yep.
is actually floating point storage of numbers, making the computation really, really fast. So
Hmm.
um, that enabled me that path to get the data in, and then boom, I had something working. I've since then tried to take that as far as possible. So now I wrote my own app completely from scratch,
Yep.
and certain games, like you could almost say that they have a fingerprint. They have a certain characteristic about what their payloads look like.
Hmm.
So the app that I've got up at the moment, the Racing Telemetry app, it actually supports Forza Horizon, Forza Motorsport, Project Cars 1 and 2, the
Hmm.
Dirt rally games, and it
Really?
actually even supports F1 because they've all got slightly different payloads that when they come in, I can just go, oh, yep, I know what that is. It's this long. It starts with this number. I'm just going to interpret that as as like the F1 game instead of Forza. So I've managed to build this sort of library of games that I can support just
Yeah. So
auto magically.
which is brilliant, isn't it? Like that's the idea. So
Yeah.
I'm curious though. One of the things that I noticed in your in the app was there's a really cool feature I hadn't seen anybody do yet, and you actually had a video frame where you could actually see live view of the race. So like actually like while you're looking at the dashboard, real racing. Is that just a native out of the box feature, or did you have to do some pretty custom things to make that happen?
No, so that's actually a little bit of video magic.
Oh,
That's
is it
using
really?
Open Broadcast Studio to record the dashboard
Oh,
and then
brilliant.
just overlaying the video on top of it.
Well, I
So
tell you what, it sold me on it, and I was super impressed. So clearly, we should try to figure that into the futures.
it
Now,
certainly does make for a good dashboard demo.
it does, doesn't it? And we've got a bunch of dashboards. For the folks that are joining remotely and you're not able to see this, we're literally sitting in front of the McLaren Experience Center. We've got an F1 car over here with a bunch of really cool demos of Splunk augmented reality. And then we've got our data driver simulators over here running the F1 2021 game, Brett, that you talked about. But one of the things we talked with the McLaren Shadow folks earlier was on the racing side. Data could actually be used to really, explicitly help you get better at racing. Have you actually been able to use the data you've built to actually shave any lap time off yet?
So I'm not a super competitive driver. Like Forza Horizon is more of an arcade style
Yeah,
game, but I had
totally.
the data, so I definitely wanted to try. So I would quite frequently be sitting here, playing on my monitor, and then on my second monitor, I'd have my dashboard up, and I'd be just trying to see, oh, is there things that I could be paying attention to that might actually improve my driving experience? And
Yeah.
as it turns out, it was just the wheel slip. I ended up building a dedicated page that just showed the wheel slip percentages of each wheel on the car,
Mm-hmm.
just a 4x4, 2x2 grid,
Yep.
and I colored them. So without even necessarily looking at the numbers on screen, if I could see the red starting to flash from beside me, I know, oh, I'm probably cooking this corner a bit too
Yeah.
hard. I'm probably pushing it. I need to probably
Starting to get
back
into a
off a little
drift.
bit. Yeah, exactly. So, or like, I don't know. I'm one of those terrible racing drivers who, if I'm not holding the accelerator, oh, I could be going faster. So I don't like cruising, but and so then obviously then I'm over braking and sliding.
Yeah.
So yeah, watching wheel grip actually I think did make me a better driver.
Well, so one thing though, so being a better driver is great. We're technologists. We probably don't have a future being competitive sim racing drivers. But the thing we do have a future doing, I think, and our job security hopefully is founded in our ability to use these fun use cases, these things that maybe like if you work in IT ops or security or observability, software development, like you may not look at racing and sim racing and go, oh, that totally makes sense why I would care about that from a day job perspective. But I'm curious from your perspective, because I know my answer, but Brett, like, have you seen the work that you've done in developing this, racing telemetry app? Has it made you better at your job, like in your actual day job?
Yeah, it certainly has, and that was the motivation for me is that I needed an excuse to understand metrics so that when I finally did come to the customer who
Hmm.
wanted to do something, maybe not a racing game, but their IT ops or something like that,
Hmm.
I knew how it worked, and not just like sort of knew how it worked. I really knew how it worked. I've pushed it to the absolute limit. And squeezed everything I can out of it. So I've always felt like I've had a really good understanding of metrics that I would have never had I not embarked on this journey to try and ingest hundreds of events per second with millisecond resolution from racing games.
Yeah. And see, that's fantastic, folks. If you hear nothing else about the story when you see us talking about McLaren, the story is that this is a absolutely fun, engaging, useful data set and use case that is very accessible. Like people understand racing. It's pretty easy to, get started and think about logical things that you might want to ask questions of. As Brett said, about, cooking tires or like how do I, shave lap times off? Or as the McLaren team talked about previously about planning pit strategy or making driver decisions. It's about following that curiosity and using it to make you better in your day job. So I love the story, Brett, of sim racing makes you better at being a Splunk consultant. That's awesome. But one thing I did also notice is you've got your name. Speaking of things that you've done that make you better, you've got your name on a whole bunch of apps. Like I don't think you're kind of like you're seasoned, like you just are known as an app designer and builder for Splunk. Did I see that you actually built an app to get real life telemetry off cars?
Yeah, so once I'd published the original version of the Forza Telemetry app,
Hmm.
I realized I could apply those exact same principles to the OBD2 diagnostic port data on my car.
Yeah,
Essentially, there's those like little Bluetooth adapters that you can plug in and then
yeah.
pair them with an app. I'd been using this Android app called Talk.
Hmm.
I'd been using it for years previously, but I just recalled one day, hang on, it has the ability to send a HTTP sort of poll every second with an update from all the data from your car. And I'm like, well, I've just built this app that can do UDP telemetry to metrics indexes. It's probably going to be fairly trivial to just do the same thing with this HTTP feed.
Yeah.
So I built and I published an app called Talk on Splunkbase.
Hmm.
It collects this data, stores it as metrics. You can visualize your trip on a dashboard. So you can see like things like your speed over time, your average speed, max speed, see how often I'm speeding. It's not great.
Probably
Duration,
useful if you have
but
kids.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And also like your GPS coordinates. So because the mobile phone has GPS, it was storing the GPS coordinates. So I could do all of this sort of nice, insightful things
Hmm.
for my actual car, which is nowhere near a racing car. Um,
That's too bad though,
and
because in
it was actually,
Australia, y'all actually have what I think is the coolest racing cars, the Australian supercars. Those are my favorite. I actually built one here in the U.S. It's technically a Holden, but it's called a Pontiac, and it's easily the
oh
most
yeah,
fun racing series to watch. They're wild.
yeah. But it was actually really like surprising to me. So I built this
Hmm.
just because A, I could and I knew I
Yeah.
was going to be able to. But I started analyzing the voltage of my car, and
Okay.
I'd had weird like electrical issues in the past. And then one day I, woke up, tried to get in the car, the battery wouldn't start. I'm like, oh, battery. All right, I'll get a call for a replacement. But then I went back to the data. I'm like, oh, hang on. If I was actually proactively analyzing the data that I've been collecting all
Yeah.
this time, I could see the gradual trend down in the drop of my voltage. I could have proactively like figured out that, hey, my car battery is about to die. Maybe
Yeah.
I should replace it or
That's
something
right.
like that. I've had so many people come back to me with weird stories about how they've had an issue with their car, so they've downloaded my app and self-diagnosed it
Hmm.
using that Talk app and Splunk.
It is
Never
fantastic.
even considered that.
Well, for those that maybe aren't, gearheads and know how to work on a car, but that OBD module that he talks about is legit. It's the thing that a mechanic plugs their little reader, their code reader into the car to know what's wrong with the car. Vehicles today have computer systems on board that self-diagnose, they collect telemetry. So what Brett is essentially doing is he's using a, pretty low cost, little OBD, Bluetooth, cell-enabled, GPS-enabled device to plug in there and leave it there, get the data, and then, by the way, we can use Splunk to be the code reader, right? You can use Splunk to be the telemetry sensor. And so when I hear that story about voltage, it makes me think, man, that's a fantastic use case for, setting adaptive thresholds, setting event analytics to where, when you have a break scenario, what that alert factor should be. So it should be pretty easy to set to save for the future. So maybe that's a rendition. You start including voltage sort of best practices for alerts. I'd love to see that. Now, if I remember correctly, did we ran across each other in conf19? Is that right? Is that when we first met?
Yeah, I don't think we met in person, but certainly I knew Kyle as well
Mm-hmm.
because Kyle's an Aussie, and so it just so happened that I'd written a couple of interesting apps that related to vehicles and Xbox games, and
Yeah,
you were going on a bit of a road trip.
that's right. The one I remember talking about was that I would have loved. We did use that to collect data off the RV, but the only problem we had with the RV, aside from having 3 adult males locked in an RV for 2 straight weeks driving across the country, besides that, was flat tires. We kept getting flat tires in really terrible locations that were very expensive to fix. So I don't think the data could have predicted when that was going to happen, which is too bad. We'll have to figure that out in the future. Well, Brett, I have one last question for you before I let you go. So much of the interesting development that our team has done and that we see around Splunk, it seems to stem from Australia. What exactly is it that makes Australians so willing to follow their curiosity to create such fun, interesting use cases?
Oh, geez. Look, we're a large country. We're a large island with not a lot of people.
Hmm.
So I guess I could say there's not a lot else to do other than innovate. But we are also kind of a little bit far away.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It helps to break out on our own and really make ourselves known.
Yep.
But I think the actual secret is we're actually 10 hours, or I think maybe for you, maybe 17 hours in the future.
Yeah.
So we're actually just from the future. So.
That explains it. Well, folks, Brett, I want to tell you, Brett, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I do want to call everybody's attention today. Let's see, it's today at 4:20 p.m. Pacific time in Chairman Ballroom 359. Brett will be giving his talk. So if you're interested in motorsports and sim racing, in following your curiosity to build cool things with Splunk, go check out Brett's session and make sure you check out all the apps and add-ons that he's built in the past. Because again, it's all based on curiosity. It's all about bringing observability and insights to fun and interesting use cases like never before. Brett, thank you so much for joining. Hope you have a safe conf there in the comfort of your own home. And we'll be back tomorrow with the championship race to .conf around 4 p.m. Be sure to tune in right here where you're going to see McLaren CEO Zach Brown sit down with us, and then an awesome race here in the McLaren experience at Splunk.conf22. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on the next show.
Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here, thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your story at Splunk. You've been quite the veteran, you've seen many cons. This is my first, so walk us a little bit about the energy and what you're seeing.
Yeah, we as we were just talking, this is my fourth conf. It is absolutely a thrill to be back at conf, and just to meet people. We are social beings at the core of who we are, and networking and communicating and learning and educating ourselves and just spending time with one another has really been super impactful, and I've just gotten so much out of this, and I'm so excited about the next day and a half.
Well, awesome, appreciate that. And we're seeing so much energy here on the show floor. As I said, I joined Splunk about 6 months ago, and one of the things that really brought me here is our technology is so pervasive. It's every aspect of our customers' lives, both their personal lives and professional lives, right? And data, everything is a data challenge in one way or the other eventually. So it's pretty incredible, some of the use cases, some of the stories we've seen already from the keynote and the super sessions this morning, and like you said, more to come through the rest of the week. So I'm very excited, obviously a lot of energy and people back together, so that's fantastic. What do you find the most sort of exciting thing about Conf this year?
Yeah, in addition to what I had mentioned earlier in terms of the networking that we're doing and just the personal engagement, I was really excited about the keynote earlier this morning and the stories that we heard from so many of our customers. And just the announcements that we had. I know that our practitioners get so excited about many of those announcements, and it was just, I could sense the energy in the hall and during the keynote and during some of the super sessions as well. How about yourself? What have you, what have you, it's exciting to you?
It really is, and it's, this is my first conf, so one of the things that really struck me was the theme of innovation, right? Innovate here is the theme for the conference itself, but really looking at it come to bear through our customers' eyes. Papa John's, for instance, talked about innovate to win as their theme, and how cool is that, right? And they're talking about really interesting use cases. We heard from Nubank and Heineken and GE, number of customers, but also it's about partners as well, right? One of the things we see as a key accelerator for Splunk adoption is our partner ecosystem, right? Whether it's Zscaler for things like Zero Trust, or it's working with Accenture, Deloitte, and other GSIs out there to really help our customers be more successful. Or it's the cloud vendors as well. We heard some announcements from Google Cloud this morning as well, so super excited to see partners and customers to come together.
Yeah. You know what, we don't continue to be the company that we are or continue to innovate without our partner ecosystem, so that's awesome to hear.
Awesome. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Mike, is you heard Gary and Garth at the keynote this morning talk about a unified security and observability platform. A lot of the folks that are here at Conf are practitioners. They're hands-on, they use the platform. What does that really mean to them when you say unified security and observability?
It's a great question, Irshad, and I think when I think of unification, it's getting, again, that end-to-end visibility, that end-to-end resiliency that we heard about earlier today at the keynote. But most importantly, it's about the business outcomes that we're able to achieve. And I think as practitioners, they're really moving more towards focus on not only the technology, but also the value that they can deliver back to their business partners.
That's incredible. Yeah. And we've heard from customers, right? Whether it's Arlo, Nasdaq, there's a number of customers. You must have a ton of other customer stories.
I do, and I think I'll start off with the Papa John's story. Just, I know you mentioned that, but I actually had the opportunity to have dinner last night with Papa John's. And when you think about that, the end-to-end visibility, whether it's observability, whether it's security, whether it's IT operation, their ability to get that, and they talk about resiliency and end-to-end visibility. And the team that I talked to last night at dinner mentioned this time and time again during the discussion. And it's just not focused on the IT operations, it's really store operations. So things as simplistic as we might think around the temperature of the oven, or something that's as important around revenue generation around their POS. But anything that has to do with store operations is enabled by the platform and that end-to-end play that we provide to them day in and day out. Arlo, you had mentioned Arlo. I had the opportunity to work with Arlo 4 years ago when they first started to heavily invest in Splunk. And we started to talk to them before the busy season, and they were getting ready for millions of new devices going out into the marketplace. And what they found was the ability to have Splunk not only for their internal systems and getting that visibility and insights, but also how all of the devices that are operating out in the marketplace are executing, gaining insights on that, and also securing that. So again, it's without the Splunk platform, they would be challenged to do that. You mentioned Nasdaq, also someone that I've had the opportunity to work with. Nasdaq is constantly innovating. They're delivering new services to the marketplace, and in order to make sure that they can understand the impact that those services are having with their customers and the customer experience, they're using Splunk as a platform to be able to gain those insights and either tweak the service or more importantly, identify other areas of services that they can deliver to the marketplace.
That's amazing. And one of the key themes that I picked up on already, it's only day one, but already it's very clear, is Splunk is, as I mentioned before, pervasive. And it doesn't matter where it starts. There's a lot of stories where it starts out with the IT ops team, and then quickly the security team comes sniffing around and I want some of this, right? Or it's the other way around. The DevOps teams adopted initially, and then you've got monitoring and other teams that come in. You must have a ton of stories about that sort of cross-pollination.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I'll bring up is when you think about the recent Log4j vulnerability that we identified, and I think Liberty Mutual was also brought up this morning, but it's a great story, right? And that end-to-end visibility and intelligent management saved these folks hours of manual work when they were dealing with that particular threat. It also allowed them to reduce alert fatigue, be much more efficient in how their organizations are operating day in and day out. And again, without having that end-to-end visibility, without having that resiliency, again, things that we've talked about consistently, they would have struggled to be able to react in the time frame they did.
That's such a great point, and at Conf, right, a lot of the stories that get picked up are like the bigger stories, but there's all these stories behind the story that I really like to kind of dig into. You mentioned, things like alert fatigue, right? So how can we get a little bit more intelligence? And one of the things that has really struck me is things like, Splunk incident intelligence, anomaly detection, really helping customers, where AI ML can be more in tune with their business, right? Because there's a lot of times basic thresholds doesn't cut it anymore because your business could be cyclical or it could be going in a particular direction. So you do need to be able to help with that alert fatigue. So that's something that I think doesn't make the news as much, but it's truly critical for customers.
Awesome. So there's been a lot of cool announcements throughout the day today.
Yep.
What are some of the things that maybe haven't gotten as much airtime that you'd like to share with the audience here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the themes I picked up on already is automation, right? That's something, the scale at which our customers operate, there's really no way out except to automate some of those tasks, but also it's important that Splunk administrators are able to focus on more value-added tasks. So automation helps sort of, in both directions. So things like the open telemetry collector, we talked about Splunk Assist as a way to really bring in some of those cloud insights for our enterprise customers, and that's something that will obviously increase their security posture for the platform itself. So those are some things that I think, again, may not get highlighted as much, but I think they're critical for our customers. One thing that Papa John's and other customers have talked about is workload pricing. And the pricing aspect of workload pricing is important, obviously, right? Because it really takes the conversation away from ingest to really about how customers are getting value out of Splunk. But more importantly, I think there's a scale aspect as well, right? Papa John's talked about how they went from a few hundred stores to thousands of stores, right? And they were able to do that and really get more control over their environment because of workloads pricing. So that's something that truly resonates with me. And as a marketer, we're storytellers. That's something that we love to see more of. Workload pricing at the heart of it is Splunk virtual computes, right? So it's really a bundle of I/O and other compute and memory resources for both indexers and the search heads. But it's really more than that. As I said before, it's about controlling your environment. As our customers start to think about planning ahead and really thinking in terms of where are they applying their Splunk power to what type of data. All data isn't created equal, and there's different workloads that lend themselves better to ingest versus some that lend themselves better to search. And so being able to really take, almost like a DJ, where you've got these sliders and you can really, on a very, very granular basis, be able to look at each workload and go, I really want Splunk's power to be focused here, more for ingest versus search.
Yeah.
You know, so that to me is kind of something. You must have seen a lot of these stories, right? Obviously workload pricing, data tiering, ingest actions, all of these sort of really kind of helping customers do more with Splunk. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, I love the whole idea of these three areas, ingest actions, data tiering, and workload all coming together at the same time. And you know, they work in combination. I will tell you, Irshad, I don't think it's one or the other, or one or two of them and not the other one. I think bringing those together really provides limitless data ingest. And I say that actually to be a bit provocative, but to your point about tuning how they're using Splunk from an SVC perspective really allows us to think differently about the data that we're bringing into Splunk and where we're putting that data through the tools that we had just mentioned. I mentioned I had dinner last night with Papa John's. We've mentioned them a couple of times here. When I asked them what they thought about the workload pricing metric and how that was impacting their business, the immediate response was that I'm able to focus not on keeping data out of Splunk, but getting data into Splunk. And then the outcome comes of that is business value. And we talked about some of the store operations and revenue generating impact that they're able to have. And without workload pricing, their team is spending time preventing data from getting into Splunk. If you take that the next step further, when we think about just a data strategy and a data tiering strategy, and we think about getting the data in the right place, at the right time, for the right use case, having that data tiering strategy is critically important. We heard some announcements about our federated search with S3 earlier today, right? A great opportunity to get that data in the right place at the right time, whether it's data that we need real-time access to, whether it's data that we need to search for historical insights. We have that ability across the platform to be able to deliver that to our customers. And ultimately, it's all about getting insights and value out of the data that they're ingesting and bringing into Splunk. And we've, through workload pricing in particular, data tiering and ingest actions, we've really created an environment for our customers to do just that.
That's incredible. And you know, again, I'm going to tap into your wealth of customer stories here. Financial services, I mean, that's something that is so data intensive.
Yep.
There's a lot of operational data, but there's also a lot of analytical data that has strategic value long term, right? And it's like an ice cap, it kind of builds up over time. We heard from Stripe, they're increasing the GDP of the internet, right?
Yeah.
I love that stated goal, right? Nubank was another customer that was highlighted. 120 terabytes of data, just again, it's the ice cap that keeps building. Can you talk a little bit about how those three, the trifecta of ingest action, you know, workload pricing and data tiering kind of brings it all together?
Yeah, I think, you know, you mentioned Nubank, and again, we saw them on the stage earlier this morning, but it is, when you think about that business, they built that business as an online bank from the ground up. So being able to get visibility into all of their data is critically important. It's important for budgetary reasons, right? You heard on stage Kat mention that without workload, without ingest actions, without getting the data in the right place, they're unable to operate their business. And I won't go so far as to say at all, but we are a mission critical component of how they operate day in and day out.
Absolutely, and I think that's been the biggest revelation for me is how critical Splunk is to their data strategies, right? It's more than an IT tool, it really truly is a business tool.
Yeah.
So that's been pretty incredible.
And you mentioned Stripe. When you think about Stripe and the scale that they operate within, it is absolutely mind-boggling. If you recall some of the data that we heard earlier today, 500 billion.
Yeah.
Is that what we heard?
Yep.
I mean, just it's absolutely amazing, the scale. And there's not a lot of platforms out there in the world, if any, that can scale to the degree that Splunk can.
Yeah, I think that's it, Mike, right? Just in terms of, you know, our customers being able to bet their life on a platform, it's scale. It all comes down to scale because there's a lot of solutions that could offer point solutions that could offer certain functionality, but when it comes to scale, I mean, we're talking, you know, 8 billion searches on the Splunk platform in the last month alone, right? 1 million users and counting. where our cloud data sources are growing 93%. So when you start to look at some of those numbers, it really becomes, Splunk is really the only choice. When you combine that with what you earlier talked about, the unified observability and security platform, it's a pretty powerful story.
Yeah, without question. So, what other things are you excited about in terms of managing hybrid cloud environments, hybrid environments in general?
Yeah, great question, Mike. And this is something that, again, it's a bit of a theme that's starting to emerge really at Conf, is customers are telling us, look, I'm working, for instance, log management, right? There's a lot of cloud vendors that have their own log management solutions, but really, in a sense, they're locked in. When you start to look outside of managing hybrid and multi-cloud environments, there really isn't a solution outside of Splunk, right? So our hybrid cloud story is really something that customers value. And you start to think about things like synthetic monitoring that is now integrated into the Ali cloud, right? You think about data manager, you mentioned federated search, going across to S3 and being able to use it for different tiers of data. That's incredibly valuable to customers, right? So when we think hybrid, sometimes we start to think in terms of moving from on-prem to the cloud, which part of it is, but really the bigger hybrid story is how do I operate in a hybrid cloud context, right? My surface area to be secured and monitored just got that much more complex because I've got more moving parts, right? I'm dealing with multiple vendors and there's finger pointing when bad stuff happens, right? So how do I make that easy? And Splunk is really that glue that connects across all these pieces. So I think we're really that strategic data partner for customers, and that's something that customers value. I mentioned partners at the beginning, and I'll kind of bring it back to partners. Think about things like the content pack for ServiceNow, right? We've got 350 third-party SOAR integrations, right? We've got a number of partners on the show floor here. We've got 2,700 apps in Splunk base and counting. All of this it really points to a robust ecosystem, right? No one can go their own course in the data world. It's just not possible, right? No single vendor can claim to have all of the solutions. So playing nice with the ecosystem is such a big part of hybrid. So I'm really excited about what I'm seeing here.
That's awesome, absolutely awesome.
Very cool. Mike, thank you for your time today. Always a pleasure speaking with you and learning about customer stories. So enjoy the rest of your conference, and I know you have a trip to France planned right after this, so enjoy that as well. Folks, thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the Builder Bar. We have a lot of great stories there, lots of demos. We got beanbags, we got lots of tchotchkes and giveaways. We want to hear your builder stories. We have presentations that talk about how others are building with the Splunk cloud platform, just as you heard the Heineken story this morning. There's hands-on labs. Make sure to check out the Pavilion if you are here. There's a lot of resources available, even if you are attending remotely. I got to say, I'm looking forward to the Snoop Dogg performance, tomorrow night. So for those of you who might be remote, unfortunately, will miss out, seeing you there. But really hope you enjoyed the conversation here, and stay tuned for the rest of conf22. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irshad.